Hey, welcome back to the Gilbertson Aero Factory. Today is February 2nd, 2025. It's a Saturday, late morning-ish. I've not been in the shop for a whole week, so you haven't missed anything. Nothing has happened out here. I've been sitting there in the office doing other work, and hopefully the bulk of that is past for a while. So today, picking up where I left off, I did get the spar removed. I do have to finish removing the piano hinge from the spar. You can probably tell that the rivet heads are all gone, obviously, because this has been removed from the skin, but the tail of the rivet is still connecting the piano hinge to the spar. So I got to push those out. I kind of up in the air. We'll see if those come out cleanly from the piano hinge or if I need to order a new one. I have a spare spar. I don't know if I mentioned it on the video. I did on the podcast. This had been sitting in the corner of shame because it was part of the whole laser cut parts fiasco, and they were offering replacements, and I took it. I've done a quick inspection of it, and I haven't found any nasty misshapen rivet holes on here, but I'm going to go ahead, final size drill it with a reamer, and then double check and make a decision then if this is worthy of my airplane or if I need to order another one. Either way, ordering another one would be expensive because of shipping, but the delay doesn't really matter. I've got plenty of stuff to keep me occupied while I wait for a couple more parts to come in. Today I'm going to remake this bracket, and this bracket I have to order. I don't have material to fabricate one here in the shop, so I'm going to be waiting on parts anyways. I think that's about it for the update. So yeah, let's build an airplane. Okay, welcome back, and let's get back into this mess, because that's what it is right now. Sitting here in the foreground is my spare spar, and I will spare you the suspense to keep the alliteration theme going. I decided not to use the spare spar, and here's why. It has nothing to do with that spar. I did take a look over it, and I think that it is serviceable. The 2 or 3 holes that maybe showed any sign of being a little bit out of round would totally be cleaned up when they were final size drilled. So no concerns about that. However, when I looked at the spar that's sitting in front of you there, the one that I took out, the piano hinge is still connected to it because those rivets went through the skin, then the spar, then the piano hinge. So even though I have removed the tops of the rivet heads and removed it from the wing, they still are connected to they're still connecting the spar to the piano hinge. All this to say that piano hinge is really soft aluminum, and there's no way to remove it reliably without damaging it. So I am going to go ahead and replace the hinge, and since the hinge is basically the length of the spar, they'll be shipped in the same tube. So might as well just start with a definitely not laser cut spar, since they're going to be shipped together. So it's the expense. The big expense would have been, if I decided to order a new spar, the big expense would be the shipping, and I'm gonna have to do that anyways with that piano hinge. So there you go. I will say that there will probably be a bit more of delay on that, because I think that type of hinge is currently on back order, and so are the Cherry Max rivets that I ordered for the stuff that I need to do on the aft spar of the wings. So what you see me getting at here is something that I can accomplish today, which is to what I mentioned at the beginning, remake that bracket. This is the angle bracket that attaches to the front of the forward spar of the flap, and then will ultimately be mated up with the flat bracket that you can kind of see near the bottom right. the old one there. That's the one that we put that 6.7 degree bend in. It'll be mated up to that, but not that exact one. I have to order that. That is not something that I have material around that I can fabricate it from scratch. So fabricating the other one, you've got that piece of angle that is, I want to say, 1.5 inches by 2 inches in terms of like the length of the two sides of the angle. So we need to create the overall length, the width of it down to, well, it's not in front of me, but excuse me, I think it's 2 5/8, something like that. And then one of those legs, the 2-inch legs remains 2 inches, but the 1.5-inch leg gets cut down to 3/4. And then there are a number of holes that we will, 5 holes that we will mark out on the material and drill them. Those are the ones those will ultimately be the holes that are the guide for match drilling that section of the forward spar. So I was able to get all of that done today. The total work time in the shop today was just, we'll call it 3 hours even. But you know me, that doesn't mean that a lot was done. I go pretty slowly with this kind of work. And to be honest, the placement of those rivets, the 5 rivets, the 5 rivet holes that you're making there, the placement isn't super critical. They're mapped out on the plan so that they are evenly distributed on the face of that piece. But if you were off, a 16th or a 32nd in any direction, it wouldn't create any problems for you. It would just look weird. Nonetheless, I do take my time with stuff like this to try to get it measured and drilled correctly so that it looks like it came out of a shop that's maybe a little less amateur than this one actually is. So yeah, I spent some time with it. And then the next thing, and it will be coming up here shortly in the video, is I will put this all aside, knowing that it's going to take a little while to finish this up and get to work on the torque tubes, I think you call them, or the push rod tubes. I don't know. There are 2 types of push rods that we use for our ailerons. There's one that goes from the bell crank out to the aileron itself and actuates the aileron, and then there's one that operates perpendicular to that goes, it's a long one that goes through the wing root into the fuselage and connects to the stick. So I'm going to start on the smaller one, and it's a 48-inch length of powder-coated steel tubing. That's what I'll get into. But it looks like here in the video, I'm still measuring and marking. I really milked this one today in terms of the amount of time that took, but I'm happy with how it turned out. I'll say that. So yeah, I did the cutting, most of the cutting on the bandsaw, finishing it up on the Scotch-Brite wheel, which is normal, and then probably not necessary for this piece, but I drilled out all the holes on the drill press, and the reason for that is I wanted to, as much as possible, try to ensure that the holes that I'm drilling are straight through and not angled at all. So plus, I don't know, I have the drill press, I want to use it. Yeah, so I got all those drilled out, and as I'm recording this voiceover, I'm wondering if maybe I should have sped this up and made the whole thing a little bit shorter. I didn't get every minute of the 3 hours on video today because I had a shop visitor, which was awesome. There's a gentleman named Mark who is he lives in Daytona. But he does spend a fair amount of time in the Houston area. So he sent me a message a few weeks ago that he was going to be in town and asked if he could stop by because he is also an RV-8 builder, and he got his kit, or much of his kit, quite a long time ago. I think he said 2008 was the last time he set a rivet. And now he's getting back into the build. He's got the empennage, which is mostly completed. I think all he owes is a vertical stabilizer. He did that back in the day. He's got the wing kit. He's got the fuselage kit. And yeah, he's getting back into it. So he wanted to stop by and check out the Aero Factory and ask a few questions and take a look at the work. And so we had a nice visit. Probably hung out for close to 2 hours and told stories. So I look forward to getting updates on Mark's build, and maybe even dropping in to see what air park life is in Daytona at some point. So that was fun. Anyways, I am here getting into the Torque tubes. As I mentioned, it is a single length 48 inches. What's interesting about this is that there is not a lot of extra material on this. I think that oftentimes when we get stuff like this that we're going to make a couple pieces out of, Vans leaves us a little bit extra, but the length that you are to cut these two tubes to is 23 and what was it again? 23 and 13/16 inches. It's a very specific number, but basically that means that the initial cut, just separating the two halves, you've only got like an extra, not even 3/4 of an inch, I don't think, of material. Yeah, it's pretty slim. So I measured and measured and measured and measured and measured, because when I see a measurement, a call out as specific as 13/16, 23 and 13/16, I figure that it's important that it's not a 16th over or a 16th under, right? So yeah, measured a bunch of times, made marks in several spots around the diameter, or the circumference rather, of the tube, and then used a piece of tape to mark that line, like to mark the line all the way around to indicate it. I made a rough cut to split them with my brand new cutoff tool, which I love. I've wanted for a long time, and I had a gift card for Christmas, and so I used it on that, which was awesome. Yep, that's what I made a cut with, and then I went over to my bandsaw to make the closer cut, the next cut to the line, and quickly, and it wasn't much, by the way, because there's not a lot of extra material, but I realized very quickly that the blade that I have on that bandsaw, while it is good for aluminum, it has no interest in steel. So, but the amount of extra material that was left on there after the rough cut was so little that it wasn't a big deal to go over to the sanding disc and work that down to the line. So that's what I did. A little bit of deburring, cleaning up the edges after the cuts and after the sanding. And I had a deburring tool that I got from the kit that I got from Cleveland that it's kind of modular. You can put different deburring bits in it. And for the life of me, I could not find those other bits, and one of them you can come in through a rivet hole and rivet and deburr both sides at once, which is great, but you can get into tighter spots with it. I finally found those pieces, thank goodness. I knew that they weren't lost. Nothing's ever lost, but they were misplaced for like 3 months, and so those came in really handy for deburring the inside of that tube. The next instruction is to prime the instructions say to prime the inside and outside of both tubes. The other tube is not powder coated. This one is, therefore, yeah, powder coating. I'm not going to prime the powder coat. Anyways, but yeah, the inside does need to be powder coated. So the inside needs to be primed. And thoughts on that. So what I did, since we're sitting here talking about it, and I didn't get all of this on film. What I did, after I got these things precisely, each 23 and 13/16 of an inch in length and nice square cuts in the end and deburred and everything, was that I took a little cutoff patch of, we call it Scotch-Brite, a little Scotch-Brite pad, and punched it through each of those tubes several times. The first punch through, by the way, put out, it was a mess in there. I was surprised at the amount of just muck and gunk and maybe a little bit of rust came out in the first patch. So I punched Scotch-Brite pads through those tubes repeatedly until I wasn't pushing any sort of dust out other than just a little bit of residual from the Scotch-Brite. Then with shop rags soaked in acetone, went through them a whole bunch of times. So now I've effectively scuffed it and cleaned it. And then what I did was taped off one end of each of those tubes with just some blue painter's tape, and took a plastic cup and sprayed a bunch of self-etching primer in there and use a little funnel to pour it in and swirl it around. I'll show you a little picture. You can kind of see what I did on the end, but I have more to say about these torque tubes and no more video of building. So I'll let desktop me talk to you for a bit, but other than that, thanks for being here. So working on these torque tubes for the ailerons, specifically the one that goes from the bell crank up to the aileron itself. That's what I was working on today, cutting them to the correct 23 and 13/16 length, which is really specific. But I have noticed, watching other builders, there is always a complaint about setting these two rivets that you match drill through the tube and through this threaded rod end that gets pressed in here. But then I noticed a little note over here: optional weld in place of rivets. That's kind of interesting to me. This may be the route that I go. I don't follow a million builders, but I don't think that I've seen anybody take that option yet. I'm curious why. So anywho, that's all about that.